Okay guys, if you are struggling with any of the 4 basic reviews that we're doing, this is the video that you want to see. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it in class, but yet I still need you to know the material. So we're going to start with what are integers. Integers, if you will remember, are they're whole numbers. They're whole numbers, and it also includes their opposite number. So for instance, if you have -4, -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. So they're counting numbers that includes negative and positives and the number 0. So here's our number line. Remember, 0 is it's a neutral number, and then on the right we have positive numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, and on the left we have -1, -2, -3, away from 0. So it's the typical number line that you see, those number line charts that you used to see in elementary school. So if we're writing integers, so this is a big concept right here, this integer. What is an integer? It's very important to know that it's negatives and positive counting numbers, including 0. So if I'm writing an integer, a 3-yard gain is going to be +3. $75 deposit is +75. 5 miles above sea level is +5. 2 strokes under par, -2, and so on. So hopefully this is a lot of review for you, so I'm going through it fairly quickly so you can move on to your homework. When we compare and order integers, we're seeing which one is greater. So if 5 is greater than -12, 20 is greater than -25, 0 is greater than -13, but when we read it, we read left to right. So for instance, -13 is less than 0. So remember those alligator signs that they used to teach us? We're going to see that back over here. And then of course when we order integers, we order from least to greatest. So think about it as you don't want to lose a lot of money. Losing money is negative. So if I look at number 17, -9 is my greatest loss. So I would put the brackets around and I would have -9, then -5, then -1, 0, 2, 4, and 13. Close my bracket. So from least to greatest, the greatest amount of loss to the most amount of money. Now let's talk a little bit about absolute value. Absolute value, if you'll remember, it is the distance from 0 on a number line. So let's take this number line up here. For example, right here. Here's 0, and I have 3 units to the right, and I have 3 units to the left. Well, if you think about it, if you're in a car and you're going down, you're going down the road, and you take a right and you go 3 miles, your odometer would say 3 miles, positive 3 miles. And then let's say you come to that same stop and you take a left. Your odometer is still going to say positive 3 miles. So we can't get negative distance. Distance can never be negative. How cool would it be if it were? We could reverse those miles on our odometer, but we can't. So absolute value is the distance from 0 in a number line. And if we know distance can't be negative, it has to be positive. So what does absolute value look like? This is the notation for absolute value. Okay, you have these 2 lines, and then in the middle is what we're looking for. So the absolute value of 7, what's the difference? What's the distance from 0 to 7 on the number line? Well, it's just 7, and it's positive. Let's take a look at -20. The distance from 0 to -20 on the number line is still going to be 20. So whatever is in here, you just make it positive, and so it would be positive 20. Number 23, the absolute value of -4 is 4. And absolute value of -11 is 11. Okay, so that is absolute value. Distance can never be negative. So when we're adding integers, so adding integers is just what you've been doing all along, adding and subtracting integers. So you look at whatever you have more of. Do you have more positive integers or more negative integers? So for instance, you have -3 and a +8. I have more positive integers. How many more positives do you have? You have 5. We spend a lot of time with cups and chips. If we have trouble with this concept, we can go over it in tutoring, cups and chips. But how we look at this is if it's a positive integer, I would say it's a yellow chip. And if it's a negative integer, I would say it's a red chip. So when we lay them out, we have 1 yellow chip and 8 yellow chips. Those combine together to be 9 yellow chips. If you have 2 red chips and 6 yellow chips, you have more positive chips. You have 4 more positive chips. On number 5, you got negative 21, so that would be 21 red chips and 3 yellow chips. You have more red chips. How many more red chips do you have? Well, you have negative 18. If you struggle with this, let me know and we can, go over that in tutoring together. Subtracting, it's the same thing. You're just red or yellow chips. You've got 1 red chip. You have 3 red chips. How many red chips do you have? 4 red chips. So my sign would be negative. Here we have 9 yellow chips and 4 red chips. I have more yellow chips. I have 5 more yellow chips. So my answer would be 5. Here I have 4 yellow chips and 6 red chips. So I know I have more red chips. How many more red chips? 2 more red chips. Here I have negative 28 and negative 8. So I have red chips and red chips. It's still going to produce red chips. And I have negative 36 red chips. Okay? So that's a quick review on the chips. We no longer in algebra say adding and subtracting. What we say is we're combining integers. We're combining like terms because it doesn't really matter if you're adding or subtracting. We're looking at, do you have more positives or more negatives? So that's what we're doing there. Sometimes we get a little complicated and we have these double signs. And that is a lot of just trash. It looks ugly, takes up a lot of space, so we always rewrite it because in algebra, we want to make it simple. We are always simplifying like terms. We're simplifying equations. So when you have something that looks like this, that's an awful lot of stuff. So our first step is we're going to simplify it. But a couple things you need to remember. When you have a positive times a positive times a negative is a negative. So we are going to rewrite this as 2 minus 6. And now it's simple. Now I can see I have 2 yellow chips, 6 red chips. Do I have more yellow chips or red chips? I have more red chips. I have 4 more red chips. So my answer would be negative 4. So I'm going to rewrite this. I have negative 20 plus a negative 5. I don't want to see that plus a negative 5. So what's a positive times a negative? It's a negative. So I'm going to rewrite that to read negative 20 minus 5. Now I can see I have 20 red chips, 5 red chips. That means altogether I have negative 25 because I have 25 red chips. So if I rewrite, look at number 19. I have 9 minus a negative 2. Minus a negative is a positive. A negative times a negative is a positive. So I'm going to rewrite it to look like 9 plus 2. 9 plus 2 is 11. And 11 would be my answer. Okay? And I know that's a quick overview of integers and how they kind of relate together. So if you're struggling with that, come and see me in tutoring. So absolute value examples. So now when we simplify absolute value, what we're going to do is we're going to look inside those absolute value brackets first. And I have the absolute value of negative 13 is 13, plus the absolute value of 15 is 15, and now I can simplify it. 13 plus 15 is 28. So I do whatever process is in those absolute value brackets. Here I have 21 minus 8. So what's 21 minus 8? I get 13. And the absolute value of 13 is 13. So my answer would be 13. Jump down to number 31. I have negative 7 minus 16. I have 7 red chips, 16 red chips. That means I have negative 23 red chips. Well, what is the absolute value of negative 23? It's 23. So my answer is 23. So notice I do whatever process is in those absolute value brackets. Then I take the absolute value bracket once I break it down, and I look at that as my answer. So number 33, I look inside those absolute values, and I have negative 14 minus a negative 1. So I'm going to rewrite it to look like negative 14 plus 1. Negative 14 plus 1 is negative 13, but it's asking me for the absolute value of negative 13, which is just 13. Okay? So that's a quick overview of absolute value. And again, my smart board's kind of messing up. Come and see me in tutoring if you have questions about it. All right, so the big thing with multiplying and dividing integers is you just have to know your rule. And your rule is 2 positives make a positive. So positive times positive is a positive. Two negatives make a positive. It's the only time in life where two wrongs make a right. So two negatives, negative times a negative makes a positive. And a positive and negative is always going to be a negative. So real quick, we can kind of fly through these. I don't even have to write them down. But negative 9 times negative 3, two negatives make a positive. So it's going to be positive 27. 8 times a negative 9, a positive times a negative is a negative, so I get negative 72. Number 39, if I look at this, negative 4 times negative 7, two positives, so negative times a negative is a positive 28. Number 41, 11 times negative 2 is going to be negative 22. So that's a quick overview there. Dividing integers, it's the same thing. You just need to know your rules, what happens. So positive divided by a positive is still going to be positive. So 63 divided by 7 is going to be 9. Negative 9 divided by negative 3 is going to be a positive 3. A positive divided by a positive is still positive, so 90 divided by 10 is 9. Number 51, a negative 8 divided by 8 is going to be a negative 1. So that's a quick overview of the basic terms that you've done so far. And again, questions, come see me in tutoring. What time is tutoring? 7:45 to 8:15. Hope to see you there.